Good morning, developers. If you are new to the channel, my name is Rob and it is JavaScript Tuesday. And today we're going to look at the hasOwn method on the object, capital O. So that's easy to overlook. This comes to us from ES13 or ECMAScript 2022. And if you'd like a little more detail on the relationship between ECMAScript and JavaScript or just some background, or you want to see all the updates since ES6, which was 2015, I will drop those playlists into the description. A quick note before we go any further, I've got the MDN docs open up here, and they've got a note that this hasOwn is intended as a replacement for hasOwn properties. So if you know how that works, that's exactly what this is. They give a little rationale farther down the page, and we'll look at that in a second, but we'll go through the docs and do a couple quick examples or use cases that I have run into. hasOwn is a static method, so this belongs again to the capital O object. It's a static method, so we don't call it on the object we're interested in. We call it on the data type itself, the object. It will return true or false, so we get a Boolean back. It will return true if the specified object does have the indicated property and it is its own property, so it's not inherited. If it is inherited or if it doesn't exist, meaning it's not declared, then it will return false. So they have an example here. They've got an object with the property literally prop. They run hasOwn, they hand the object, and they're looking for literally prop. Well, it does exist because it's defined. That kicks out true. They check toString. All objects, unless explicitly intended otherwise, have toString, but it would be an inherited property. It doesn't belong to this object, so it kicks back false. And then they have this bogus property, which doesn't exist at all, and that comes back as false as well. So the syntax you just saw, we give it the object followed by the property itself. The property is almost always going to be a string unless you happen to be using symbols. The return value is always going to be a Boolean. The description, there are two things to note in here. It will return true if it's a direct property, even if the property value is null or undefined. So that's use case one that I have found. A lot of times it's easy to just use a bang, an exclamation point, to see if the thing exists. Well, that doesn't check if it exists. That checks if it has a value. And that would fail for null or undefined. So that's an important note. The other use case is it's exactly the opposite, sort of, of in, because in will check to see if a property is anywhere in the object's prototype chain. That would include inherited properties, and that's exactly what hasOwn is not going for. This property belongs specifically to this object. This is the reasoning for why you would use it over hasOwn property. It has to do with the null prototype objects, and then with overridden hasOwn property. You can look at that, but really what it comes down to is it is a more intuitive method. There are a couple more examples, and we'll do one of our own, but you can look at these. It will work on array for indices, and then at the very bottom, it has very good coverage. It has been supported for at least 2 years, depending on when you are watching this video. Over to the code editor, I've got hasOwn.html opened up with a script tag. You can, of course, use Node.js. But this was use case one that I mentioned that I ran into recently. I needed more than just is the value truthy or not. So we've got an array of objects, and they all have name and company. Some of them have sales rep. So Jim here has Noah. We does not have one at all. It doesn't even exist. Ram has one, but it is null, and then Jose has one as well. So we do something that you do all the time. We'll grab clients, we'll run for each, we'll call the one we're on C, and I'm going to do if c.salesrep. If that exists, and we're going to console.log, go into template literal mode, grab c.name, has rep, c.salesrep. Now, again, as I said, this is not what I wanted because this is going to check, I'll put at the end here, truthy value, and that means null and undefined will not pass this test. So Ram is going to get skipped because his value is null. Over to the browser, sure enough, we get Jim and Jose because they have values there. Even though this exists, it doesn't show up, and I needed it to. So I'm going to comment this one out, and I'm going to put in here if object.hasOwn to the rescue. We've got C, so this is our first argument, the object itself, again, capital O back here. The second thing is literally the string sales rep. If it has that property and it's not inherited, then log it. Missing a bracket there. This was my use case. I needed to see ROM because this was coming from a database via an API. And if null or undefined was there, I needed to know that because I needed to make decisions. We come back over and refresh, and we get ROM has rep null. That's not useful, but it was very useful to me in that use case. So I'm going to drop in here, use case 1, we need better than truthy check. And I guess I'll put in there falsy as well. So we need better than that. We want to know if it's undefined or not. The other use case is going to be what we can just use what they had rather than setting up a really complicated inheritance structure and showing you all of that. I guess it wouldn't be that complicated, but it's a lot of extra typing. We're going to check to see if it has own. We'll go to C. We're going to check for toString. Now, all of these do have toString. And to prove it to you, let's console.log c.toString open close. If that doesn't exist, this will obviously fail because that property, right, won't be a function. It will complain. But they do all have it because all objects have it. So we're going to check to see if it does have it, and I'll console.log has toString and is own. That property belongs specifically to this. I'll drop it here. May have toString, but isn't own. That is our other use case, is we are interested, does this property belong to this object as own? So back over here, refresh. That's what we get when it runs toString. It's casting an object into string, which doesn't make any sense, but we got it may have toString, but it isn't its own. Well, it definitely does because, as I said, it works. These are going to be our two use cases. Is we need to check better than truthy or falsy, and that's exactly what this is. This is our other one, and it looks like I missed use case 2. Does this property belong to this object as own? That pretty much does it. Has own is a great method. When you need it, definitely use it, and I will see you next time.